Greetings, sorcerers. Welcome back to the Contested Realm. My name's Jesse Milman Marshall. It was a fantastic weekend this weekend as the Australian sorcery community came together for our first Australian Grand Contest for 2026. This was the biggest Australian sorcery event that we've had to date, with over 64 players battling it out for the title of Grand Contest Champion. We had over 22 avatars represented in the field, an amazing diversity of deck building and creativity on display, and our top 8 players came back on Sunday to play the final matches to determine who would be the first Australian Grand Contest champion. Congratulations to James Lewis and Reginald Tickle, who made it all the way to the final, and today we're going to find out who was victorious between James's Imposter or Reginald's Necromancer. Let's dive straight into the gameplay. So we've got James on the top of the screen here as the Imposter player and Reginald on the bottom, the Necromancer. James was the top seed going into the top 8, so he will be choosing whether to play first or second. And we've got here Reginald with the full art side of the foil showing. That's one of the things that we like to allow players to express a little bit of creativity with their avatar. Most people know what the avatars do, so of course there are some players who will play with, if they're lucky enough to have one, the rainbow foil, which doesn't have the text on it. But if players want to play with the full art side of their avatar, that's all right with me. So Reginald here is mulliganing a spell by the looks of things. James on the top of the screen has mulliganed, I think, a couple of spells. Reginald choosing whether to mulligan another. We can see in James's hand some pretty powerful spells to start things off. So it's an Atlantean Fate, a Sacred Stag, I believe, and a Sir Agravain in the Imposter's hand. And one of the features of James's deck list is that it's making use of some early aggressive minions, things like Sir Agravain, Red Cap Parries, as well as some of the more powerful uniques like Atlantean Fate. And of course, in Fire and Water, you have a range of really powerful uniques that can hit the table and potentially turn the tides. Reginald with his Necromancer list making use of the skeleton tokens to play out large minions like Dormant Monstrosity and Gnarled Wendigo, and trying to turn the tables and put some pressure on the opponent as we head into the mid-game, using mobility from sites like this Wuthering Heights that Reginald's playing as his first site, and then summoning a skeleton. So James getting down the River of Blood early, not likely to be a huge impediment to Reginald. He could have some incidental life gain like Abaddon Succubus from James's perspective, but really at this point, James just looking to hit threshold early and make sure that he's able to play out both fire and water spells as early in the game as possible with a double pip. Floodplain going to help with those double pipped water spells, and having the River of Blood on the home site, already one fire pip underway. Passing back over to Reginald here, who's got a floodplain of his own, so plenty of water threshold to go around for everyone. And Reginald likely pretty happy here with the Wuthering Heights on the home site. It's something that's going to allow him to put those skeletons into more aggressive positions pretty quickly. Reginald last turn electing, we've got a parries coming down here and hitting Reginald down to 17. Interesting that Reginald last turn elected not to fly a skeleton forward, playing against a deck that has fire sites, obviously being cognizant of the fact that there could be a desert, so electing to play a little more conservatively there and keep one of the skeletons back. It does mean he's attacking for one less potentially this turn, if he does choose to fly a skeleton forward. But we're seeing here a Gilman House, an extremely powerful site from Gothic that is going to potentially allow Reginald to turn, once he hits 4 water threshold, turn those skeletons into horrible hybrids. So upgrading them from 1 power to 3 power, effectively for no mana. It is requiring them to take a slight detour off to the side here, but Reginald also being rewarded straight away for allowing those skeletons to take that detour by the fact that this Dormant Monstrosity hits the board for a significant discount. So turn 3, Reginald's got this 6 power Void Walk already out there. He is facing down this Red Cap Parries, which is only hit in for 3 damage at the moment, but 3 starts to stack up pretty quickly if it's not addressed. So Reginald not putting up an impediment to that parries this turn. He did have the option of spreading the skeletons a little bit more thinly, moving 1 onto each of his sites. Using the Wuthering Heights, he could have had an untapped skeleton on both the Wuthering Heights and the Floodplain this turn to defend if he wanted to, but instead electing to have the Dormant Monstrosity have the maximum discount, and also have those skeletons in place to become horrible hybrids as soon as possible, as soon as next turn with that Floodplain potentially. So Imposter becoming Pathfinder, James using the classic Imposter turn 3 play of moving off with Pathfinder to get a site effectively for free, for no cards, and allowing James to move into that mode of drawing a spell every turn to refill that hand and restock it with spells in this as we move into this mid-game portion of the game. And that's going to be something that Reginald is probably going to struggle a little more than other decks to knock that mask off the Imposter. One of the important things when playing against Imposter is to think about how you can get damage onto their avatar to disrupt the options that are available, because once the mask is gone, the Imposter can't get the mask back again. So this is James's only use of Pathfinder, but these key turns on turn 4, 5, 6 are really the key turns where you want to hit your sight drops and still be drawing spells. So the Pathfinder here allowing James to do that. We're seeing the Red Cap Parries moves in. With the Koi Nixie, it's forced to move in, and then the Dormant Monstrosity is able to come over and attack the Red Cap Parries to take it out. So although James was able to hit Reginald down to 14 on his turn, now James has a pretty sizable army amassing on that Gilman house. Now, one thing we're going to have to be aware of here from having seen James's opening hand is that this is turn 5. James only has one water threshold on the board, but it is a floodplain, and that's going to give him the second water threshold to play this Atlantean Fate. So unluckily for Reginald, who had a Voidwalker who was safe from that Atlantean Fate, electing to use the Voidwalker to come out from the void and into the surface of the Gilman house to kill the Red Cap Parries, in fact opening up the opportunity for that Dormant Monstrosity to be taken out by this well-timed Atlantean Fate. And crushingly, not only does James lose the skeleton tokens and the Dormant Monstrosity, he loses the Gilman House, which is one of the more powerful sites that he has access to in terms of the site ability, and he loses that Wuthering Heights as well, that was allowing him to, as the game goes on, redeploy his skeletons pretty much at will from that home site as they're summoned by the Necromancer. So this is a really significant setback for James. The Koi Nixie thankfully did have Submerge, so it survived. That's now come back up to the surface. We're seeing Nelly Longarms, another submerged minion, which perhaps would have been ideal to have out earlier as something that was a bit more immune to that Atlantean Fate, but unfortunately it was not to be. But Reginald now rebuilding that board a bit. So Nelly Longarms is presenting a bit of a threat. It's something that Reginald's not going to be able to redeploy as easily as he would have if that Wuthering Heights was active. You know, being able to move it one step diagonally potentially, so into a different row and a different column, means that it has a lot more of a threat. Being able to do so untapped and then use its ability would have meant, for example, that Reginald could have taken this Sacred Stag down. But really, if he wants to do that here, he's going to have to find a different way to get the Sacred Stag in line with the Nelly whilst the Nelly's untapped. So it could be a Riptide, or it could be getting rid of that Atlantean Fate to unlock the Wuthering Heights if Reginald does have some aura removal here. But from James's perspective, the River Rapids, the Floodplain, the Funeral Pyre, all playing a little bit of a role, not necessarily needing a lot out of his sights. I think one of the things about James's deck that we've seen so far here is that the spell plays are powerful enough. You know, you've got Red Cap Parries, Atlantean Fates, Sacred Stag. They're all powerful plays coming out of the spellbook in their own right. They demand answers and they threaten to dominate the board. Or in Atlantean Fate's case, they can answer a number of different things at once. So James not requiring as much other than Threshold out of his spellbook at this point. But Reginald looking to be a little bit more tricksy with things like the Nelly Longarms. Losing the sight ability off the Wuthering Heights is a big blow for him here. So seeing another Floodplain come down for Reginald. Thankfully for him, he does have that Lone Tower off to the side as another Air Threshold. So he's not completely locked out of Air Threshold here. We're seeing a Lord of Unland come down for Reginald, which is coming down on the surface, so that's interesting. Sometimes you'll see Lord of Unland played to the subsurface to be a little safer, but just as we say that, down comes the Death Dealer, and this is crippling because the Death Dealer destroys all minions or kills them, and Ward prevents the first instance of being destroyed or killed. And the Sacred Stag had a ward, but none of the other minions on the board do. And so the Lord of Unland, the Nelly Longarms, the Koi Nixie, and all of those skeletons, unfortunately, going to make their way to the cemetery here, whereas the Sacred Stag gets to live through the calamity and come in and attack that Lone Tower for 4. So when you're playing against a Necromancer player who's looking to amass a wider board state, you're always looking for things that can answer multiple minions at once. And early in this game here, James has managed to find the Atlantean Fate that answered all of the skeletons and the Dormant Monstrosity, as well as having some splash damage onto Reginald's sights, and then the Death Dealer comes out just as Reginald's looking to rebuild with his second wave. I think it's a testament to Necromancer's staying power here that Reginald still has quite a few spells in hand, so potentially going to be able to have a third go at building a board, despite those two powerful uniques, the Atlantean Fate and the Death Dealer, coming down to neuter his first two attempts at building up a board presence. First priority, though, for Reginald here is going to be answering the Sacred Stag, which is a 4-power minion, staring him down on his side of the board, and the Death Dealer that could be on his side of the board very soon. So a River Rapids, this is another piece of what we see out of Gothic water-based decks, and particularly those water air decks that also have access to Wuthering Heights, is the ability to really move the enemy around within your territory. You've also got the Koinixie, which we saw earlier out of Reginald's deck as well. And now the Green Knight, which is in its way another type of force movement. Though this not, unfortunately, the best situation for the Green Knight, given that I can see a swap in Reginald's hand as well. Unfortunately, not one that is going to do a huge amount here right now. But the Green Knight, unfortunately, not at its best here because the Sacred Stag is forced to attack it, so it does absorb some of that attack damage for this turn. But the Green Knight's power of 3, or attack power of 3, not sufficient to actually take out the stag. So it's really just delaying the stag's damage rather than taking it out here. And Ruler of Thule from James, another one of those powerful splashy uniques. We're talking about the power of the cards coming out of this spellbook here. Ruler of Thule allowing that Death Dealer that's on the back row to attack through across the top and bottom edge of the realm and straight in onto Reginald's home site, not just for 4 damage, but for 5. Putting Reginald down to 5 and still leaving James with 3 mana to spend here on his turn. And I can see a Blaze of Glory, another one of the highly impactful fire uniques from Gothic that cast on either the Sacred Stag or the Death Dealer here is going to lead to Death's Door. So James electing to play it on the Sacred Stag, which is then going to fight the Green Knight, which is going to finish the Green Knight off, given that the Sacred Stag had already attacked it earlier in the turn. So the Green Knight will die. It will strike the Interrogator for 3 and also strike the Death Dealer. But this way the Death Dealer is going to survive. James did have the option to use the Blaze of Glory on the Death Dealer to put Reginald to Death's Door. But instead electing to play the Blaze of Glory on the Sacred Stag, so the Death Dealer will survive. And then, of course, the Ruler of Thule, having charge anyway, is going to be able to come in and deal the last point of damage to put Reginald down to Death's Door. So the Imposter's Mask getting knocked off there. The Imposter had become the Interrogator that turn to draw an extra card as the Death Dealer came in. The Green Knight dying did get rid of that Interrogator mask, but Reginald now staring down 2 minions on top of his avatar while at Death's Door, and not just 2 minions, 2 pretty beefy minions too. A 5-power Death Dealer and a 3-power Ruler of Thule. So 6 mana available for Reginald. We know he's got a swap, but with the only 2 targetable minions on the board currently being on top of his avatar, the swap is probably not going to be quite enough to get him out of this particular jam. Tapping to draw a sight. And a Call of the Sea. That will certainly deal with 2 minions that are on top of your avatar. It does take up 6 of Reginald's mana, which is all he has available. So it's now going to be a matter of, with this Imposter slightly out of position off to the side, is James going to have something in hand that's going to allow him to finish Reginald off? And there it is. He becomes the Enchantress, he plays the Colicky Dragonets, and he attacks with the Atlantean Fate to finish off the Necromancer. So that was a masterclass from James in using Imposter's flexibility, but also the power of some of those powerful water and fire cards to really put the pressure on, and those board clears in terms of the Atlantean Fate and the Death Dealer, taking care of the Necromancer's wide board and allowing James to get the damage through. Well played to both Reginald and James. Congratulations to both players on making it to the final. We're going to have more Grand Contest finals coming up over the next couple of months. This weekend, we have Gen Con in Indianapolis. We have a sold-out 128-player Grand Contest that's going to be absolutely fantastic to be a part of and to watch, and we look forward to bringing you the final match from that in due course. Thanks for watching. It's been a pleasure having you here in the Contested Realm, and keep on enjoying Contesting the Realm. Take care.